Horizon Thunder Sphere! What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Knights of Last Call. I am Derek Melinda, your host, your game master, your friend, your companion through these troubling times. And we got an exciting one today, I think. We're going to have an exciting one here. We are coming here with the Spells and Magic. We've been off for a couple of weeks because I was on vacation. Then I was a little sick. Then we had this big Paizo announcement, and we wanted to talk about that. And all in all, it just led to a situation where, well, we just really haven't had as much time for our Spells and Magic shows. And I understand that these are a little bit more, how do we want to call it? This is the deep stuff. This is the deep stuff. And so, you know, this live stream is for professionals only. You got to take your Pathfinder 2 real serious to be here. But we do have Book of the Dead. So, you know, we're not top tier over here at Knights of Last Call. We like to think we are. We like to feel we are. Our community makes us feel this way. But nonetheless, Paizo does occasionally send us some stuff, and we did get our Book of Dead. We did get our Book of the Dead PDF a little bit early, and we weren't sure. We know we have to wait to do a review. We have to wait until the street date in order to do an official review. But they did give us the go-ahead to do some previews of the Book of the Dead, and we're going to. And I'm going to try very, very, very hard not to give my review or opinion about it as we go through some of the previews. But that is what we are here for. So obviously we are here for Spells and Magic. We're going to do our Occult level 3 spell list. But I do have a couple of Book of the Dead previews that I would like to show. But listen, we are nothing but a slave to the almighty dollar. And if you want to see some more Book of the Dead previews, we got a little tip goal down there. And at $25, I'll show some more Book of the Dead previews. And we'll just talk through them. Whenever we get to a particularly egregiously bad spell, maybe we'll pull out a Book of the Dead preview as well. Hopefully everyone is doing just fine out there. Oh, hey, we're starting off with a super chat from our friend of the show, Knights of Last Call, Patreon, Discord moderator, my Star Trek Adventure 2D20 system game master. It's Damian Williams. Which third level spells are best for my bard who listens to The Cure? Oh, we'll find them. You know, actually, you know, I try not to pre-rate everything. I want you guys to see my actual visceral reactions to particularly great or particularly bad spells live. But, you know, my initial perusals, I set up the Photoshop document in order so that we can facilitate this. This one isn't as edgy as perhaps some of our other occult. You know, Storm Phoenix, I wore a different shirt specifically because of you. And I was like, I'm gonna throw off the game. No one's gonna be coming for me. So yeah, we are gonna talk about Spells and Magic. We're gonna talk about Occult. Level 3, we're going backwards this time. Normally we go Arcane, Primal, Occult, Divine. This time we're doing Divine, Occult, Primal, Arcane, just to switch it up a little bit. And the spell lists are getting shorter, so hopefully we're going to get to the point where these become a one session per thing, and maybe even at the higher levels, it might even maybe we might cover 2 traditions in a single session. Let's talk business. Let's talk shop. We are the Knights of Last Call. We are a YouTube channel dedicated to Pathfinder 2, role-playing games, pretty much everything but 5th edition. We don't have a problem if you play 5th edition. We don't have a problem if you like 5th edition. But there's a lot of channels out there supporting 5th edition, and hats off to you, boys and girls. They think they've got it pretty well covered. So we are mostly covering Pathfinder 2, but you know, we're looking to expand our reach and maybe do some other other game content as well, because I think it makes you a better game master. And we talk a lot about this a lot in our Game Master Q&As. And we have Paizo in the chat saying the code is more what you would call guidelines than actual rules. Don't worry too much about the difference between review and preview too much. Fair enough, Paizo. I will take that under advisement. It may be hard for me to, it might have been hard for me to hold back some of my excitement anyways. Without being a full review, I will say that I am excited about the book. So, very, 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 very cool. So, David LaSalle with $5 super chat. Do you prefer to use Foundry or the Forge VTT? Well, I think there's a couple of things that we need to talk about here first, which is that the Forge is just an online server for hosting your Foundry game. So a Foundry license is $50, and with a $50 Foundry license, you can run you and all your friends in a Foundry game. The problem is you need a computer to host it, right? You need a computer to host that Foundry game. Now, that could be your local computer, and if you have a reasonably beefy computer, that can work just fine. If you're tech savvy and you can set up an Amazon cloud thing or something with Azure, you can do that as well. What the Forge allows you to do is they host your game remotely. And so everybody can dial up into that server remotely, and you can store your assets up on the server remotely. You don't have to worry about ping and downtime and all that other stuff. So the Forge requires that you have a Foundry license. Now, the Foundry license is a one-time purchase. You get a license and you can run that game as many times as you want. The Forge is more of a subscription service because you are buying server time on them. Now, that being said, before we even used Foundry or the Forge for our Patreon Discord, we had a Forge server for my personal game, my home game. It was worth it to me to just have something easy to access, no fuddling around with IP addresses and web addresses. No, I'll just pay people who are smarter than me to set it up. It's really nice and convenient, very easy to access systems, modules, libraries, assets. It's just all there. It's a fairly low price, and they've got different price options if you need more space, more power. But for the average user, it is a very, very minimal cost. I highly recommend using it if you are really taking your game serious. If you're playing once a month on Foundry, okay, maybe it's not worthwhile. But if you're running a weekly game, I think it could be worthwhile to get Forge. So you get a Foundry license, $50, and then you can upload that license to the Forge. It's still your license, it's not like you're giving it to them. But then they will essentially host your game for you, and you don't have to worry about your system resources or your internet. So from that perspective, I prefer to use Foundry on Forge. That is how I look at it. So thank you, David. That's very nice. Golarian in depth, the $20 super chat. Golarian, it's currency eve, everyone. May the seas be calm before you and the wind always be in your sails. Golarian Depth, true to his name, is a real connoisseur of the world of Golarian. He keeps a running calendar of the holidays, and today is currency eve. So happy currency eve to everybody here. And yes, as a sailor myself, I do enjoy the sentiment of following seas being wished upon us. Are we allowed to find out how many flick maces you rate the book? That's what I'd have to figure out. We've traditionally used eggplant emojis, or at least Bob has, but we'll figure it out. How many new spells are in the Book of Dead? Will you go back and enter earlier spell levels into the tier list? We've talked a little bit about this. I think what we're gonna do is when we finish, we'll see. When we finish the hey, welcome, Azikaru. I think when we finish definitely when we finish the spell tier list, we are going to go back to any book that came out that we missed and try to update everything as we go along. It's possible that we might do like maybe halfway through, like after we finish level 5, we'll say, okay, hey, let's go get all the new spells that have come out since we did them, and let's rate them and get them up to date, and then we can finish out the series, and then we can go back. And then once we have everything rated, we will probably do a new book came out, we're going to rate all the spells in that book in like one episode, right, in one go. because eventually this series is going to come to an end. So, I mean, at least we think so, right? So yeah, I'm just, a little bit about the book. Let's come over here. Hold on a second here. All right. Well, here is our Book of the Dead. It is it's a pretty sweet looking tome. It starts off here with, what I like about this book is it's a grab bag of things, and it starts off with a lot of sort of flavor information about the nature of unlife, and then it gives some really, really solid archetypes for players. I think these would be perfect for any Abomination Vault campaign, and I think provide a really strong background, as well as mechanical options for your character into an Abomination Vaults game. So that's definitely something to consider. Then we move into some really cool stuff, which we'll get into, but basically a lot of really awesome archetypes that involve you becoming undead. A whole huge list of haunts, information about how to run ghostly or spooky stories, which is, I think, really, really cool. And then we get a bunch of new monsters. And I don't want to shortchange this because it's only a few pages, but I am really excited about this. These are we'll cover this later, but these are very similar to the templates that Pathfinder 1 or 3rd edition used to use. And I'm really excited. We've had them in the game. We just didn't know it, right? They were elite and weak. And so we kind of bring these back, and we're going to go into that in the preview for sure, just because I want to show it off. I think it looks really great. Then we got a bunch of information about the sort of undead focused areas of Golarion. Not too much. Look, I'm not going to lie. I mean, again, I'm not trying to review here, but I felt this book had a really nice balance between being just a bunch of lore and a bunch of mechanics. And then lastly, it ends with a full-on adventure. So pretty cool looking book. And we'll definitely come into that. Some more as we kind of go through here through the list. And so I think we're allowed to do officially a Knights of Last Call official review at the end of the month. And we're going to have that out right away. And I know Bob has a lot to say about it. I know Aaron does as well. And I'm pretty excited to talk about it as well. The series will come to an end. Will it be before PF3 launches? Time will tell. You know what? Actually, before we get into the spells, I do want to talk about this. I think that they did a really good job here, and I just want to kind of talk about this. I'm on the record as saying I don't think we need more classes. I think we have enough classes, and I think classes, by their definition, are fairly insular, right? You choose one class, and that is your class going forward. I really like archetypes, and I really like that for this book, they included what I will call your traditional list of archetypes, as well as some very non-traditional archetypes. But to me, this is the essence, this is the spirit of what Pathfinder 2 is all about, which is a ton of mechanical complexity. But one of the things I really like about archetypes is that mechanical complexity doesn't have to be present right from the beginning of the game. With a class, you have to pick that class at level 1. Archetypes are really good at letting your character mechanically evolve as the game, as your campaign, as your storyline progresses. And so maybe your character started off as a run-of-the-mill fighter. Let's ignore free archetype for a second. You start off as just sort of a run-of-the-mill fighter, and as the game progresses, you suddenly get to a point where, yep, guess what? We're fighting undead a lot, or there's a big undead rising, and then maybe your fighter sort of represents that and by starting to pick up these Exorcist archetype feats. And they can mechanically reflect their character's change. And that is what I think is so cool about about Archetypes. Now, Luke, no, I think free Archetypes amazing, and I think everyone should use it. I'm just saying that even if you're playing it traditionally as written, I think that Archetypes are a great way to storytell with your character mechanically, and not just a way to car op and min-max and try to sort of, get more power. I think it's also a great way to do that.
Big Boy Billy tipped $10. This book is the redacted book of the year. It is so redacted I redacted the archetypes, the cross-class feats, and of course the templates. Absolutely redacted job Bizo. I was redacted how redacted the book is. Redacted emoji.
Yeah, I mean, big boy Billy there, William Brandis. I mean, he said it all. Yeah, I think free archetypes are just like backgrounds that are actually like really weighty and chewy, and like I want more mechanically complex backgrounds. I think the backgrounds on Pathfinder 2, the mechanical elements of them are a little soft. I almost wish you could like merge background and free archetype into a one-time thing. In fact, a thing that we do very commonly in our games is we allow you to take your free archetype feat at level 1 instead of level 2. That way you can actually start the game as a pirate or as a wizard in training, as opposed to just suddenly becoming it at level 2. Yes, okay, so Azikru, yes, you did hit upon something there. We have several ways that you can support the channel or support the stream. You can give us a super chat, which is great. I appreciate every super chat. I will answer your question right away, and I will praise and sing your glories. But you could also give us a stream elements tip, and you could do that through a link below, or you could type !tip in the chat. It'll give you the link to our tipping page. I push that a little bit because super chats, YouTube takes a big old bite out of the money that you wish to donate to us. YouTube comes and takes a big chunk of it. Stream Elements does not. Stream Elements doesn't take anything. So we prefer if you use Stream Elements, but you can use whatever you want. So, but Galarian in depth there gave a $20 super chat for currency even. So I sort of honored it in the spirit of which it was given to start talking about these archetypes a little bit. But yeah, so going back to these archetypes, I think archetypes are brilliant. It's the direction I want to see Pathfinder 2 moving, and they do it, again, not a review. They do it in spades in this book, and they do it particularly well. You'll notice that the requirements for a lot of these archetypes, I think, are very meetable and approachable. They're doable, and I think that it's really exciting to see what they can do here, and they've got some pretty flavorful abilities. They also use something which I really do like in the archetypes. I like when archetypes just have this additional feats component, just so that you can get more mileage out of the feats that are already in your players or your core rule book, I should say. Having a feat be isolated to just the fighter or just the whatever, the barbarian or just the ranger, kind of shuts it off a little bit. So I like when archetypes expand access to feats, even if it's at different levels. I think it gives the game just a lot more, lot more flavor and fun. It is not a Lost Omens book. It is not. In fact, I would say that this book is about 80% crunch, maybe 75% crunch, and 25% flavor. It is mostly just feats and monsters and abilities and going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. There's a lot of mechanics in this book, and it's done for the better. So it is not a Lost Omens book. And hey, Galarian did that. Don't worry about it. I mean, we're talking about the difference of 10%, 15%. But I mean, all things considered, if someone tips me $20 and I don't have to give YouTube, $2 of that, I'll take that. Free archetype is one problem. If you get a free archetype at second level by Raw, you couldn't take a different one at fourth. Some interesting ones started at that level. Now we have more fourth plus level archetypes. Yeah, there are some, free archetype system is clearly not, sort of designed. I don't think they expected how popular that was going to be. And so there are a lot of weird, wonky situations that do occur to that. And we've had situations where people have said, can I not take an archetype at level 2? And we've kind of had to wonky work our way around it. So yeah, we just house ruled it. But I do think that I think a slight revision to the way that free archetypes could be used could be a good idea because of just how popular it's become, and I think there's a lot there to do it. So yeah, I love books like this. I've gone on record as saying, I don't know if I have it right here. It's back there somewhere. One of my favorite books from 3rd edition was called Libris Mortis, the Book of the Dead. And it was a really, really great, solid book of undead that had interesting facts, kind of like the Draconomonicon as well. A lot of interesting facts that I felt were actually, almost mechanical in the way that they were approached, but it was chock full of feats, magical items, monsters, templates, archetypes, all very, very good. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit. Yeah, still have that book, Libris Mortis. Yeah, really great, really great. So let's talk about the occult. So we've got currently, we've got up here, we've got our spells from the list that were already in existence from our divine list. And occult gets a lot. Occult gets a lot of the good spells. I'm not even gonna lie here. I'll let you know this. The S tier spells from Divine level 3 were Heroism, and of course we added as an MVP Fear, level 3 Fear, right? That's the multi-target Fear. And the other A tier spells from Divine were Agonizing Despair, Locate, Blindness, Circle of Protection, and in the scroll case, Bind Undead. So literally all of the S tier and A tier spells from Divine are on the occult list. And so already the occult list is coming in here and kicking them in the teeth. And to be quick, and quite a few of the Bs as well. I think we only took off 1 or 2 Bs. And that's before we've even gone into, the other 30 or some new occult spells that we're going to add to this list. So, that I got to admit, the occult list is pretty strong. Yeah, Ruinsmith, Organ Sight is definitely still F. It's too wordy, and what it does is just so weird, and it's so, and I know this is something we get crap about on this stream all the time, is that people say we crap on spells because they're too singular purpose. I mean, that is the truth. Unless because you only get some of these spells. If you have a repertoire, then you are very limited in your spells. And if you've prepared, well, then you have to make sure that you get that exact specific spell. And if you choose wrongly, you're in a heap of trouble. And so, yes, there are situations where an F tier or a D tier spell could be A tier because you know exactly that you're going to be in that situation. You are a prepared caster. It's either in your book or you can pray for it from, the primal spirits or the divine. And, then you can take it and be very successful with it. But for the most part, it's not good. Self-confessed cynic says, this is why divine is the worst list, not because it's not viable, because the other spells have the best spells and more. And I'm going to agree with that. Pretty full on. There are as I took the spells off of our divine list, let me see if I have it here. Hold on a sec. Open recent. Here we go. So as we look at the divine list, okay, part of the problem is that some of the spells that we took, some of the spells that divine was sort of counting on were things like, remove disease and neutralize poison and, searing light and spells like this, which, as we discussed, because they rely on what is essentially a D20 roll. Searing light is an spell attack roll that obviously does very, very competitive damage against undead and fiends, but remove disease, neutralize poison, all of these spells rely on the counteract check to even do anything. That's, it doesn't even do anything. Like, if it was a situation like where some of your spells, like, if the target passes, okay, they're still slowed 1 for 1 round instead of being slowed 1 for 1 minute. But with these counteract checks, the only consolation prize you get is that it dispels it if the effect is lower than your caster level of your spell. But those aren't the effects that you're trying to counteract. The effects that you're trying to counteract are the harder ones. I'm not going to get into like cost efficiency, but like this is a big thing in like Magic the Gathering. Like the answers to offensive options have to be cheaper than the offensive options, because the offensive option already has a game plan, right? It is going to win you the game, right? If I cast a poison spell on someone, that is going to debilitate and kill them, or make it so that I can't kill them, or it could just kill them outright through damage. So it is a game plan in and of itself. It can win the game. I can take that spell knowing that I am going to be able to use that, assuming I am in a situation where I want to defeat my enemy, which, let's face it, is a lot of the time. A answer to that offensive tactic, by definition, is a weaker effect, right? Because it can't win you the game, right? It can only keep you from losing. And that alone already makes it a subpar option. How do you make this attractive? Well, in a game like Magic the Gathering, they do this by making the spell very cheap. But even then, you're talking about resources, right? Like in Pathfinder 2 terms, it would be like if remove disease or neutralize poison was 1 action, right? At least you could maybe make a statement there. This is equivalent in Magic to mana cost, right? Our most precious resource in Pathfinder 2 is actions. So if somebody cast a spell, or if somebody used an action or an activity that took 2 actions in order to poison somebody, and I can only spend 1 action to neutralize that poison, at least I'm getting some sort of action economy. The other side of the coin would be relative power level. Now, in Magic the Gathering, this is a problem. This is why defensive spells suck, because they gave up a card and you gave up a card. And at the end of the day, that's your most precious resource. And so it goes with spell slots. If they use a spell, if they win the fight. If you use your neutralized poison, at best, all you've done is restore parity, right? And they probably still took a little bit of damage or a little bit of debuff to boot before you were able to neutralize the poison. So at the best case scenario, you're down a resource, they're down a resource, and you've managed to maintain parity. Whereas if they succeed and you fail, you're both down a resource, but now they are going to, increase their chances of winning the game or winning the combat, or, doing whatever it is that their effect was trying to do. So, yeah. So that's just kind of game mechanic, game theory. Luke, the problem with that is, yeah, it's complicated. That's all I'll say is it's complicated. It is, yeah, you need to get more bang for your buck, right? Because I can't just use remove disease, neutralize poison, or remove disease, right? It is by its definition a reactive, idea. And so while I do like the idea that it, at least your answer, Luke, is a good one, but all that really does is make it so that at least the spell is playable, right? At least it's playable. It doesn't mean that it is exciting. So let me give you an example of an exciting spell. An exciting spell, if you're familiar with Dune, I don't know, this is not a spoiler, but in Dune, in order for a Bene Gesserit woman to become a Reverend Mother, she has to endure what is called the Spice Agony. And she drinks a poison, and she has hopefully has, trained enough to have such complete control over her body that she literally has control even over her cellular processes. She has control over her metabolism, her enzymes, her antigens. And she has to drink this poison and convert it inside of her body into something that not poisonous, that is not divine. And that ability to look inward awakens all sorts of cool special abilities in her. My point is, they are taking a poison, but they're not just neutralizing it. They are actually turning it into something better. Imagine if neutralized poison, okay, worked, maybe using Luke's suggestion of actually being able to counteract, but where not only do you neutralize the poison, but you transmute it into a heal, or you transmute it into a buff. Now, as a cleric, right, instead of using all my actions just to maintain parity, I actually used my enemy's attack, and because I'm being reactive and defensive, my spell has to have a bigger bang for the buck in order for this to feel like a win for me, right? And it doesn't. And so this is why I think these spells need to be more attractive. They need to be better equipped, and they need to be fun to cast. They can't just be, no. They need to be more than that. They need to make you feel engaged, not like you are just tidying up the mess left by the monsters. All right. So this is where we're at with Occult. So let's knock out a couple of these. And of course, again, if you're interested in tipping, we have a Stream Elements tip below. Super chats if you'd like. We'll show some more Book of the Dead previews as we go through. But if people want to tip and get your questions answered immediately, then we can do that as well. We'll show some more Book of the Dead as well. All right, let's get started. All right. Up first, we've got Bottomless Stomach. Ooh, boy. All right. So this is a conjuration spell, extra dimensional. And here's the most important thing. It only lasts an hour. Womp, womp, womp. Now you can heighten this all the way to 5th level, the same level that like the cleric is getting, like, breath of life and stuff like that. And then it lasts 8 hours. But basically you turn your mouth into a bag of holding, and you can hold 10 bulk. And you can swallow something up to 1 bulk at a time. And it's not even really subtle. It's obvious to anyone looking into your mouth, basically because you have a black dimensional hole in your mouth, and you can spit out an object. That's great. And each time it takes, if you take 3 actions, you can vomit out everything inside of your extra dimensional sporge. I'm not really sure why why does it have to be bottomless stomach? All right, it's getting -1 grade just because it's unnecessary. Why can't it have just been like bottomless pocket or bottomless pouch? Some Mary Poppins type stuff. Why has it got to be the stomach? It's not great. Well, this is great too. If you fall unconscious or if the spell ends, you automatically vomit out all of their items. So this spell is okay. All right. Let me hop over here. So your implication here is that the flavor, because the fun flavor is fun. That's fun? Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe my definition of what is fun is fundamentally flawed. It would also be cool if it was just 24 hours. Maybe if it started at 8 hours and then it goes up to 24. Yes, absolutely it is. Oh, okay. So you my mistake. My bad. It is absolutely fun. It's just bizarre because in a world where magic spells are researched and designed, who created this spell? Again, I'm just trying to think, like, what is the flavor of this spell? That's what I don't understand. What is the flavor of this spell? Is it supposed to be funny? Is that what it is? Is it supposed to be like for party gags? Is it supposed to be like, like one of the magicians with like the handkerchief and the cards coming out of there? mouth. Just Badoom, when you're right, Badoom, you're right, Badoom. You're right. Someone would totally make this spell. Well, regardless of fun, flavor, or the like, it's still not a particularly great spell. By the time you are this level, having access to an effect like this is probably unnecessary. I can't really see a whole lot of situations. I mean, yes, I get it. There's probably like the one situation like where I'm, Todd got it. Todd, that is the exact situation. Eduardo, welcome. But yeah, Todd, in that situation, A tier. I do want the. Wait, what? Have every prison movie I've ever seen, they always check their mouth, for like lockpicks or poison or anything like that. The moment they look inside your mouth, they're going to see that you have a yawning extra dimensional portal. So I actually don't think it's actually particularly that good yes. This is also very clearly a very bard spell. I agree. The opportunity cost is too much. And, here's the thing. If a spell is fun, fine. It could be fun. Whatever your definition of fun is. At least make it the right level. At least make it, all right. And I will kowtow to that. If you could literally just, put stuff down your entire throat and like when you check it out, it's just totally normal. Very weird and creepy. But I guess it works. I think it should be first level. Exactly. All right. Sheldon, I don't actually know how. It's been a long time since I've watched The Big Bang Theory. I like that. If the spell was went 1 hour or so, or maybe even longer, and then at third level it was 24 hours or something like that. A lot of the fun spells are let down by these very short durations that I think, as cool as your fun spell may be, are you really going to take a 5th level spell slot in order to cast this just for 8 hours? I don't think you are. So given that it is a 3rd level spell, I'm going to put it at D. It's not an F. It does do something, but I'm just not very impressed with that. All right. Our next spell is Clairaudience. I'm a big fan of this. And spell is pretty cool. It's an out of combat spell, but it's a 500-foot range, which is pretty much good enough for most what I'll call exploration areas. It's not good for maybe like an overland area. Ruinsmith, how did I miss that? Bottomless stomach fails the gnomish flick mace test. You can't even swallow a gnomish flick mace. How did I totally missed that. If I can't smuggle in, 5 gnomish flick maces, then what am I doing? How are we ever going to overthrow the prison if I can't smuggle in enough gnomish flick maces for us to even have a chance? Yeah, Damien, when you're right, you're right. That is it in a nutshell. That is exactly right.
Vin tipped $5. Wasn't here for the remove X chat, but they're actually quite good for prepared casters. However, they're best used for long duration super dangerous conditions like ghoul fever and thus perhaps Pestis scrolls. Emo, a tier scrolls.
I think the issue with them, Vin, is still that the afflictions that your party are going to be dealing with that are going to be the biggest threat to them are going to be, higher level than them. And if they are higher level than you by more than one, okay, like if you get an affliction from, let's say let's say you guys are casting level 4 spells, and you get hit by a level 5 spell, which creates an affliction, or you're level 8 and you get hit by a level 10 monster's effects. Well, guess what? You now need a critical hit on your counteract check to be able to counteract. And that's the problem with it, is these spells were already difficult to deal with. And I mean, remove spells are fantastic for dealing with lower level threats, right? So if the fighter in your party, or the sorcerer in your party, fails the fort save against the ghast fever, ghoul fever from the creature that's 2 or 3 or whatever levels lower than you, and then somehow fails its fort save, and again, you are higher level than it, so you're probably passing your fort save on a 7 or a 6 or a 5. And then you'd have to fail them again and again and again at each of the, after the incubation period. So you are already advantaged in that situation. The place where you need help is, oh no, the higher level mummy just hit us with mummy rot. And now I have this horrible affliction that my fort save can't possibly deal with. I need a 15. I need a 16 or something crazy, or this is just going to get progressively worse and worse and worse and worse as we go along. Oh, I wish someone could help me. I wish someone had a divine spell that helps me. And then the cleric comes in and says, hey, I can help you. And you're like, great. Well, what's the DC? Well, the DC is already higher than me because the monster or effect is higher level than me. So I, as a caster, need to hit the DC. And you're like, okay, well, what do you need to roll? I need to roll a 15. You're like, great. You're like, the problem is, even if I hit the DC, I can only do 1 level higher than me, which means if this thing is high enough level than me, I need a critical hit. And if I need a critical hit, I basically need a nat 20. So what are we doing here? Thank you for the subscription, Eduardo. So anyways, moving on. We're getting through it slow today. All right, Clairaudience. I love this spell. I love divination spells. I've talked about this before. Somehow this one isn't uncommon, but it lasts for 10 minutes. It's 500 feet. It creates an invisible ear, even if it's outside of your line of sight and line of effect. Now, it can't move, but, you don't need to know or see where it is. You could cast Clairaudience. You could be down on the street, and you could cast Clairaudience and say, I want to cast it up into that tower so that I can hear what the people are saying. Or if you're in a dungeon and you want to, you kind of figure out roughly, oh, there's a big temple, there's a big room in the center of the dungeon. It's several hundred feet away, which could be several encounters away, but we want to hear what's going on. We want to hear what they're planning. Do they know that we have infiltrated this place? Cast Clairaudience and get your information. I think the spell is really great. I mean, obviously it is limited in what it can do. So what it can do is pretty cool. But the other thing too, and I think this is really important when we talk about spells, we talked about things like, oh goodness gracious, knock, which allows the wizard to sort of simulate picking a lock, right? And we talked about how disguise self allows the wizard to sort of simulate making a deception check for disguising. But the game was really careful not to step on the rogue's toes, and they want to make sure that the rogue is still kind of better at those things, and so it seems kind of weirdly limited. But this is something that nobody can do, right? There's no mortal equivalent to being able to magically hear from 500 feet away. So I really do like this as a scroll, and I think it is a B tier scroll. Just because it is a fun, cool, powerful effect. It's great one. You'll never probably regret having 1 or 2 of these in your back pocket. There's no scaling to it. There's no dispelling it. You know what I mean? So it can be cheap even as you get higher level, and you just want to buy a really cheap. I think a level 3 scroll is like 30 gold. So by the time you are, even in the 8, 9, 10, you're getting hundreds of gold per encounter. You could easily have a scroll of this, packed away. And yeah, Steven, I agree. If you have a staff of divination and you end up with one of these Clairaudience in your staff, it's a great use of a couple of charges from your staff for the day. So, Ian Ryder, I am 100% with you. I had a wizard who essentially was that. In fact, in our Dragon's Delve campaign, our PF1 Mega Dungeon campaign that lasted for over 3 years, the party's primary wizard was Varen, who was a diviner, and used a ton of spells. And one of the group's favorite activities was to, take different loadouts as a prepared caster as they went, from day to day to, today we are doing recon. We are, this is scouting, reconnoiter, and recon. We aren't, I'm not going to pack all my fireballs and lightning bolts and haste spells. Today, it's going to be more clairaudience, clairvoyances, locates, and really try to make a game plan. Then once you figure out what are your threats, what do we need to deal with, you go back to town, you get some potions, the alchemists brews whatever they need to brew with their infusions, the prepared casters take their prepared casting, and you can prepare differently and really leverage the power of a prepared caster. Staff of Divination might be the best staff. R.I.P. Gwildor. Gwildor had a staff of abjuration, but yeah, I think Gwildor just took it when he took Clairaudience. Until level 5 Prying Eye, then you can still buy for sure. Lug says it's also a great spell to use versus the party. Imagine enemies collecting information about the party, and the party can feel awesome if they're searching and see these invisible ears. That is true. One of the classic adventures from 3rd edition, one of my players' all-time favorite, is Heart of Nightfang Spire, where the group is making their way into an undead-filled tower, where the center of which lies a massively powerful vampire wizard. And throughout the entire dungeon, the vampire is scrying on the party, such that when the party finally did confront him many sessions later, I felt totally justified in preparing the exact right array of spells and abilities to exactly counter and well, quite frankly, give the party a hell of a time dealing with him simply because of this. So yeah, great stuff. Gabriel says Staff of Divination has True Strike. Ding 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 ding. So yeah, True Strike. And we got the dab emoji. Thank you, Self-Confessed. All right, so yeah, I like B Scroll. I think it's a solid spell, and I'm excited to see what it can do. All right, next is Cozy Cabin. Here we go. So this is very functionally similar to Leomund's Tiny Hut, if you're familiar with that spell. It takes 1 minute. You summon a cabin for 12 hours. It's 20-foot square, 10 feet high, wooden with some walls. Self-Confessed Cynic says, YouTube membership when I want my emotes. Yeah, so thank you for the super chat. So what Self-Confessed Cynic is talking about is YouTube allows you to create membership options so that you can have people pay you essentially a subscription, and but you get access to cool, unique stickers and emojis. And we haven't really turned that on because, quite frankly, we've been busy about a million other things. But Self-Confessed Cynic, a member of our Patreon, has insisted, and it is on my list to do. So hopefully next time we do some spells, if you're interested in getting some custom badges or emotes for these live streams to make yourself even more standoffish or stand out more and maybe be more of a troll, we'll have some fun emotes for everybody. Okay, so Cozy Cabin. The interior contains some cots, a chamber pot, magically lit. It's very nice, even if it's really gross outside. And yeah, so here's the deal with this spell. This spell is very, 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 very campaign specific. In some games, this spell is going to be amazing, right? It's going to be fun for role-playing. It's going to be fun practically as you have a cozy cabin that you can just pull out of your pouch or pull out of your mind and cast it and get a full 12 hours. So enough time to camp for the night, make dinner, sit around, hang out, talk about your plans, and then get a full solid 8 hours of sleep the next morning before you wake up in your magical cabin ephemerates. As a D&D player, I love spells like this. This, to me, screams D&D magic. This is, when people talk about spells that are fun, this is where my mind goes, okay? And because this, to me, is crazy and weird. Like, this isn't something that you would ever see in like an epic fantasy game, but it is definitely very I know we're talking about Pathfinder 2 here, but this is very D&D, right? This is a very D&D type spell. Self-Confessed Cynic with another super chat. We're getting super chats all over here. I'm missing them. Damien says, "Shut up, Vin. I give Derek enough money." Damien's only afraid because the emotes will be dope. I mean, both of you are heroes in the Patreon, so it goes without saying that the emotes will at least be voted upon, if not chosen, by the heroes of the Patreon. So, I mean, there is that definitely possibility. Total Entropy, I agree with you. I think if your wizard doesn't take Cozy Cabin, you should feel ashamed, or at the very least have a scroll of it. Okay, I'm not going to say that this spell should be one that you prepare every day. But if you were traveling overland, I think you would. And I think, you know, even, I mean, unless you were in the most dire car op situation, like I think about the spells that like I would want to have if I was a wizard, right? And this is exactly what I would want to do. And, you know, and I think, you know, I think Menandrea says it right. Nothing quite makes you feel like you can do magic like summoning a house. Wand. Yeah. I mean, if you were casting it every day, I think a wand is pretty reasonable. Now, the fact of the matter is, in a lot of games, this isn't going to matter. Your GM is going to maybe hand wave overland travel, and, you know, you are just going to, you know.
Dark Council tipped $15. Where is our emote?
Hey, Dark Council for $15. Where is our emotes? All right. We got to get the emotes out. So we also got to our first goal. Hey. That's pretty good. So let's finish this up, and then we'll do some more previews here, because there is something exciting I want to show you. So I like this. I will admit, thank you, Dark Council. I will admit that I think that I'm going to put it at scroll, but I do think a strong case could be made for it to be a wand if you're using it a lot. Now, does this spell give you some sort of massive, you know, structural? No, it does not. I mean, unless you really are traveling in an area where the ability for this thing to ignore the elements at night while you're sleeping, because you still have to deal with it during the day when you're moving around, would matter. You know, I think it's just a C. But that being said, I really do think it is very, very fun. It is very, very cool. Yeah, again, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe put it in the middle. All right. I like that. Boom. There we go. And if you were in a game that had a lot of overland travel, or where it became very apparent that this spell was going to actually, you know, come up a lot and be useful, I could absolutely see it be a case where you would want it, you know, where you would want it to be, what's the word I'm looking for? You would want it to be, it could be a B tier, you know, because it would be that powerful. It would be that useful. So, all right. There we go. There we go. All right, we got our cozy cabin with the heart emoji. All right. Kevin, that's okay. We haven't really talked about much many of the spells yet, so we've gotten through a couple of them. You know what, Kieran, and you know what, Kieran? Kieran made a really great point, and I do want to talk about it. Don't worry, Kevin, we derailed Derek. Which is, he said, this is why you got to read the review and not just look at the score. Derek waxed poetically about Cozy Cabin for 10 minutes and got to see it, and it both make sense. You know, and I talked about this when we first started doing the spell ranking. The grade is the grammatical point. It's the exclamation point or the period at the end of a sentence. Okay. There is a lot of context to these spells that we talk about, situations where they would be worse, situations where they would be better, situations where I think that they are fun and worthwhile looking at. But, you know, the grade is not always the entire picture. Otherwise, I would just go B, C, A. You know, we would just do that. And we're not doing that because obviously we have other goals or intentions. All right, our next spell is Cup of Dust, but I do want to hop over to Book of the Dead real quick. And the reason why I want to pop over to Book of the Dead is because everybody was nice enough to tip a total of $25. So I think we could talk about more. So let me talk about what I am, if I was talking about a review, what I am most possibly excited about is this section here. This to me is very, very exciting. It's very cool. And I think it is the beginning of an interesting idea. So these are, for lack of a better word, cross-class feats. These are feats which are tied to the pursuit of necromancy. And they are not tied to an archetype. Okay? This is a class feat that can be taken by multiple classes that already exist, such as a necromancer wizard, a cleric who has a negative font, or an oracle of bones. Or if you just have the ability to create or control undead, this feat isn't available to you. And you take it as a level 4 class feat, and it makes you, better at, summoning your undead minions. These necromancy class feats sort of bridge the gap between classes and archetypes. And I think they are really, really a cool way of creating more mechanical design space within Pathfinder 2. There's a couple of them here. There's this Undying Conviction, Necromancer's Visage, Sepulchral Sublimation. And I think that these feats here, even though there's just a couple of them in the book, I think that these are really, really exciting. Because on top of something like, Reanimator. Hey, Kaz!
Tip $25. Sadly, I don't have a ton to add to the conversation on stream, but I can throw money. My hope is that I'll build some of my own opinions on spell/game mechanics during my time playing in the Northern Reaches. Regardless, thanks for doing these streams.
Hey, thanks, Kaz. I guess we're going to go a little bit longer here. Kaz is talking about Northern Reaches. It's the Knights of the Last Chord Patreon's brand new mega community game. We've got over 40 players. We've got close to 15 GMs who are running a bunch of different adventures, all custom made in a persistent shared world where we keep track of time and everything like that. We've run 3 adventures so far. This is our first week. I think we're going to run a couple more by the end of the week. And people level up, and you can change the world. You can, it's kind of like a home game, but you're playing it with so it's like if Pathfinder Society was a home game. So we're not as worried about keeping strict to the rules. Players can change things. They can modify things, and they could do it by playing the game. And the GMs will work together to kind of collaborate to create these kind of cool emerging arcs. We don't have a defined pre-written script. Instead, it's kind of being written by the players and the GMs as we go along. So thanks, Kaz. Appreciate the tip. So yeah, so this is the kind of stuff that I'm really excited about this book, because I think that this represents them expanding their scope. So this is really, really cool flexibility, really, really awesome abilities to just sort of add class feats. And someone had asked earlier, I think we need more class feats for the spells. Now, class feats for feats. We saw this in APG, and we haven't seen it since. And Aaron, a.k.a. William Brandis in the chat, I think said it best, which is the one thing I think that Pathfinder 2, and I know that this was a problem for me in Pathfinder 1, I think what they are trying to avoid in Pathfinder 2 is I'm going to sit down and make a fighter. Cool, I've got my core rule book. But now I need ultimate combat, ultimate intrigue, ultimate wilderness, ultimate whatever. Why? Ultimate equipment. Because every one of those books had maybe something for the fighter, right? Maybe an archetype, maybe an alternative archetype option, right? It became to the point where if you wanted to make a character, you basically needed every single book. And that became very tedious. As it is right now, a class is mostly self-contained. So outside of some of the feats that they added in APG, if you're a fighter, you don't need to have Secrets of Magic or Guns and Gears, because they don't have 10 new fighter feats in every one of those books. So you can stay pretty, focused. I think if they are going to do it, I would like to see them do it this way. I think this is a really cool way to expand options around a theme that could apply. Like, for example, you could easily see there being some warrior class feats, right? That fighters could take, like two weapon fighters could take it. Rangers that specialize in dual wielding could take it. Maybe barbarians with like an animal instinct could take it, right? And it's kind of a way of virtually adding feats, but doing so in a very controlled and focused way that I think is better than just spamming feats down our throat. you know? So I really, really like that. Now, because of Kaz's tip, I do want to talk about where do I want to go to? Let's go to this. I'm going to skip ahead here. By the way, we got a couple other archetypes that I talked about. Very good for the PCs. You have this Reanimator archetype. So again, these are all mostly player focused, and I like that they start with this. People that are good at reanimating undead, people that were good at controlling undead. You've got where is it here? Is it up ahead? Oh yeah, I went too far ahead down. Sorry. You've got this ghost, or what is it called? Undead Hunter, Undead Slayer, right? Another very good PC focused undead. So like the book kind of gives you both sides of the coin. It's like, okay, I want to be a PC who's focused against undead. Here's a soul warden, someone who, is a shepherd of souls and makes sure they go the right location. Okay, here's a undead hunter, a hallowed necromancer who sort of, worships the divinity of death. But then it's like, okay, well, we also have the other side of the coin. Maybe your character isn't so nice, or maybe you're in a game where necromancy is a bit more prevalent. And so then you have things like this, these necromancy feats. You have this reanimator archetype, which again is specializing in bringing back undead. So I think that's really, really cool. But what I wanted to skip ahead to was page 73. This is at the beginning of the monster section. Undead adjustments. Very, very cool. So just like we had elite and weak that you could add onto a monster to, change its stats around, here is basically templates in Pathfinder 2. If you want to make a ghoul dragon, all you have to do is add on the ghoul adjustments, right? And now suddenly you've got a ghoul dragon, right? This 1 or 2 pages basically tells you how to essentially turn any monster in just a few minutes into a mummy, a ghost, a skeleton. This is awesome. A shadow. I loved templates from Pathfinder 1. I love them here. I mean, that sounds like a review, but it's not. I think, I like elite and weak. I think that's a great way to get more mileage out of the bestiary monsters. Look, I'm a classic person. You know this. The monsters they got in Bestiary 1, those are classic monsters. Your ogre, your dragon, your owl bear, right? Your classic monsters. As they add more monsters, just like with me classes, I like fighter, rogue, wizard, cleric, sorcerer, your core. I don't necessarily need the 29th class, right? Because quite frankly, unless something is very, very unusual, usually by the time you get to Bestiary 4, let's face it, we're starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel here, right? I would rather get more mileage out of a existing monster that I think is really cool. And as William Brandis says, elite dragon, let's go. Right. You could take a dragon, slap an elite on it, and throw the ghoul on it. And now you have an elite ghoul dragon or ghost dragon. I think this is really, really cool. I like the way that they made it. These are not complicated templates. They're a little more complicated than elite or weak, but I think these are really, really good. And
Jason B tipped $10. Dude, what are you doing? We're not allowed to say owlbear. You trying to get us sued?
All right, fine. I'm surprised there's not like Falcon Badger or something that is just clearly supposed to be an owlbear ripoff. But sorry, my bad. That would be funny, Reaper Grim. So yeah, I think this is great. I really like this. I think this could be great, but I'm not sure how I actually feel about it yet. Very exciting. And again, it's silly and it's stupid, but sometimes something as simple as a few pages of really well-written mechanical text will get me more mileage than 20 new monsters. And, I think that for me, that is definitely usually the case. I like options. These are like feats. These are like archetypes for GMs. Throw us some love, and I like it. So that let's do a couple more do a couple more spells. Sorry. All right, we got the Cup of Dust. It's available to everybody but the clerics. 3 actions. It targets a creature, and we afflict them with basically super thirst. They need some Gatorade. It lasts 1 day, and let's take a look. If they succeed, they're fatigued for 1 round, which prevents them. Fatigue gives you a very minor penalty. I think it gives you a -1 penalty to attack, maybe, and you can't take exploration actions. So for the most part, this is almost no effect. It's close. By the way, this is 3 actions. Yikes. If you fail, the creature is immediately affected by thirst. It becomes fatigued and takes 1d6 points of damage per hour. This obviously is what we would classify as a GM spell. By the way, I'd like to point out that this is exactly the type of spell that I was talking about with Remove Disease or Remove Curse. If someone casts this on you and they are higher level and you get hit by a nasty version of this, you are likely to fail these saves and be in trouble. And it would be really nice if the cleric could actually help you out, but they can't. On the other hand, if you're high level and some acolyte, occultist casts this on you and you basically auto pass the DC and you just happen to roll low that first time, chances are pretty good that you're going to pass the subsequent fortitude saves and you don't actually need the Remove Curse. So how effective is this as a GM? I think this is pretty okay. I think this is a cool slow burn affliction, and I could really see like a desert. Ruinsmith, it is true, but it only fatigues you for 1 round. So, if they fail, it's 3 actions essentially to -1 AC to stay in saving throws, which isn't even as good as Sickened or Frightened. And I think Lug nailed it. I think I'm going to go with a GMC on this one. It is definitely a GM spell, and I think C is probably appropriate. It's definitely the whole combat on the failure. I agree. But with 3 actions, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the times, a combat, all right, we've talked about this on the stream a bunch, but unless, I don't know what you all are doing, but my combats are like literally 3 to 4 rounds. 4 rounds is pushing it. A lot of times they're over really by the 2nd round or 3rd round. Maybe you get in one more round of like cleanup where like there's 1 person left. So now there were like 2 or 3 monsters, and now there's just 1 monster left, and it's 4 party members just descending to just, surround them and take them out. Like it's not really that big of a deal to my mind. I think being frightened or sick, I would rather frighten or sicken a creature than give it fatigue. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. I consider that weaker. Yes, frightened burns off. Yes, sicken can be wretched, but the effect hitting all of their things, especially their attack roll, I think is not. Yeah, fear is still so much better. I'm with you on that one. All right, so we got GMC on that one, not the truck company. All right, our next one is another curse. This one was a curse, by the way. This was the Curse of Necromancy, and this one is the Curse of Lost Time. All right, well, it's touch. That already makes me a little leery. 1 large or smaller object, construct, or living creature. Okay, I'm all. It's like the Vince McMahon meme. Okay, I'm intrigued. Basically, you super age something. If it's a construct, they take 46 damage, making a basic fortitude save. And on a failure, it's also for 1 hour, clumsy 1, enfeebled 1, and can't be repaired. So it's 46 damage, almost frightened 1, because clumsy 1 plus enfeebled 1 is fairly close to what frightened is going to do, probably for most constructs, unless it's a spell casting construct. That's okay. The damage isn't super great. If it's a living creature, it takes no damage. It just becomes clumsy one, enfeebled one. So not quite as good as Sicken or Frightened. But it lasts an hour. But like we said, it could say last 1 minute, and 99% of the times, you're ahead of the time. You're ahead of the curve. But if you cast it on an object, it does 46 damage and still somehow applies hardness normally. The item becomes shoddy and can't repair. And you can heighten it to do an extra whopping 1d6 points of damage. Not very impressed.
Steven tipped $10. More death.
Steven. Well, we must first finish this up. I don't really know that I love this spell a whole lot. Ezekaru, I think this is mostly an anti-construct spell. I agree with that. And if you know ahead of time that you're going to be fighting, Luke got it right. Touch range sucks. It's got a lot of meh options. It's going to our D. That's correct. Gabriel, you're also right. Most of the curses really haven't been that exciting at all. Okay. Well, we had another tip, so let's go look at some more undead. All right. So, this I was pretty excited about. They give you a big section here on haunts. Well, first, let me talk about this. First, before the haunts, they have a nice 2 pages here. Again, like 2 to 3 pages, maybe 4 pages is really kind of like a sweet spot for me. This kind of content, which we're about to go through here before we get to the hazards, the haunts, this for me is a great bridge between what we would consider to be classic, straight lore fluff and full, hard, crunchy mechanics, numbers, and stats. I think things like this are sorely missing in the role-playing game space, and I think are missing in Pathfinder 2, and I'm happy to see they're including here, because this is basically saying, hey, here is how you become a better GM. Here is information that is going to help you construct adventures or scenarios that are more in line with, maybe in this case, the theme of ghosts and ghost stories. And it talks about design principles. It talks about what goes into the classic ghost story. A sidebar about friendly ghosts. The idea, some of the tropes of ghost stories about victims and the protector and the hoax, and sort of talking about how to write it out, breaking it down into a 3-act structure. I think these simple 2 pages here do a great job of basically saying, hey, GM, we are going to spend a few moments to actually teach you how to GM. And if you want to make something like a ghost story in your next adventure or in your next dungeon, here are some cool ideas and some tropes that you can utilize, some ideas that you can manifest to make that happen. And then kind of pivoting off of that, rather than just giving us that and then moving on, boom, we go into a section here about haunts. And quite frankly, it's just a big list of haunts from hazard -1 all the way up. So, something like a locking door that closes behind you, to, soil, which is infested with blood, voices calling out. So you've got some pretty low level hazards, which arguably could be used even at higher levels just as kind of a flavor fun. And then it goes all the way up. This bloodthirsty toy. This is what a poppet should be. It's a pretty cool little trap, but it is essentially a haunt. It's awesome. I really like it. Furniture toppling over, something shoving you, as you move up a stairway. And again, just a ton of haunts here. You can see we started at level -1. We're already up to level 5. And I love the haunts. It's probably my favorite hazard type, really, because I love how it varies between sort of that sort of poltergeist-esque, toppling furniture, bloodthirsty toy, to the more spooky ooky things like, the weight of guilt. Love it. Like that's a cool haunt. This idea that you become bound by this, and adding things like this when you're already fighting another type of creature, just a great way to add a lot of depth and dimension to especially like a haunted or ghost focused dungeon or adventure or haunted house or the like. And yeah, here we go. They don't have a whole lot, but they have 12, 16, all the way up to 20. And then they give us some complex haunts. A full spirit that is entuned, a sadistic conductor, spirit cyclone, ghost stampede, grasping dead. This one is really awesome. Just right. Like, these are classic tropes, right? Hands of the buried dead erupt from the ground to drag at you and pull you underground. How cool is that? Like, you use this haunt and you're in a graveyard along with maybe some zombie monsters or ghoul monsters. You are going to have an awesome encounter that is really going to stick in your players' minds, and it's going to be something they remember. I think this is very, very, very cool. So, Remy, hey, thank you for the super chat, Remy. I don't know if you meant to send a message, Remy, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Oh, okay. Sorry, you didn't say. Can we see some skeleton stuff? I am curious about their heritages. Oh, Remy's just subscribed too. Oh, welcome, Remy. Yeah, I think we're gonna go back to doing some spells for a bit, and we'll definitely get back to some Book of the Dead, but unless we get to $100, and then we'll cut right over to there. But again, I think adding these complex haunts into the game is a good thing, and I, for one, am really excited about it. And they even have a level 19 one here where you basically create a siphoning vortex of spiritual energy that tries to rip people's souls out and is doing a ton of damage and draining them. And it's a very, very cool ghostly thing. And I think they're great. I agree with Self-Confessed Cynic. I do love haunts. I love the complex haunts. I think in the mechanics, in my experience, in the mechanics of the game, haunts almost work better than traps because you can get away with them more. Like, some of the complex traps that they use in the game are a little bit silly when you read them. Like, blades are like swinging through the air along like a complex network of gears and pulleys in the ceiling, and like sliding around on like tracks in the grooves in the ceiling. It just gets to be a bit much. But with a haunt, it makes sense, and I like that. How do you run haunts with durations that don't have hit point values? I've had a hard time explaining how my fighters can't break things sometimes. Well, I mean, part of it is you may want to try to let them break things and then make them realize that this is not very effective. I mean, part of the allure of haunts is it requires a very different skill set in order to approach them. And this is an example, to use a dungeon world example, one of the moves, a GM move in Dungeon World, is show a character the weakness of their class. And this is a great opportunity for other characters who have more skills, like rogues or investigators, to kind of step up, and they say, hey, fighter, I know you've got this broken attack bonus, and I know that you're a master and we're all expert, and I know that you crit everything, but this is something where swords and, it's like, Gandalf in Mines of Moria, where he says, fly, swords and bows will no longer be of use here, and he says, like, this is not something you can win, that you can just fight your way free of. And so, part of that is kind of the school of hard knocks and letting the fighters see the downside of their class. Hey, buddy, I know you get athletics and then you get 2 more class skills, but the fact is, you're not equipped to handle this, and blades are not going to be sort of the solution that you need. And maybe it makes them reconsider some of their character choices. And, I think it's okay to show characters the weakness of their class. So, I'm not, and also obviously with the haunt, that's a classic trope too. Let the fighter struggle, realize that he is helpless against it, and then you give them an opportunity to flee. A spectral voice gathers and says, "Be gone from this place, mortal," and basically saying, "Hey, fighter, if you want to bug out, now is the time. But if you stay, this supernatural presence is going to be the end of you, because your half-hearted attempts to break through this haunted statuette are not gonna get the job done." So punish them, I guess, would be my things. If haunts are attached to an object, you can let them break the object. Otherwise, they specifically don't have a form that can be harmed. Yes, exactly. If it's a spectral, supernatural haunt, it's useless. If it is tied to an object, like maybe maybe it's like a child's pacifier or their crib, or there's a statuette on the desk, kind of a Harry Potter-esque, it's Voldemort's journal. Maybe give the players a chance to make a perception check to notice something about the haunt, or if they engage at all, you can even skip the perception check. If they engage at all and try to interact with the scenery, chew on it a little bit, give them that crumb, give them that morsel, make them realize, oh, hey, this thingamajig is, seems to be the source of all of this, and give them a reason for why they took that adamantine dagger, and they can ignore the hardness and start, stabbing the mystical journal, a la Harry Potter. So, yeah, I mean, I think, listen, let me try, there's a quote I'm trying to think of. Strengths make your character, you can't have a character without strengths because you're going to fail too much. But if you don't have a character without weaknesses, your character's just not going to be interesting. So it is important, I think, for characters to have not always just be Superman. And I think that's important. No problem, Waka. Thank you for the super chat. That was very, very considerate and very kind of you. Appreciate it. All right. So Curse of Lost Time, we put into the D category. All right. Am I noticing a theme here? There's a lot of like temporal flux going on here at level 3 occult, because we know we had Curse of Ages, we had the Cup of Dust. Well, I guess that made you thirsty. Day's Wait. We know that Haste is in here. We know that Slow is in here. Jeesh. All right, moving on. And now we have a spell with the exact same flavor. Yep, I agree, except it's a transmutation, not necromancy curse. You fast forward time. Now, already, though, we've got a 120-foot range, 2 actions. It's only a living creature, so that is something to be considered. Fortitude, and it lasts a minute. You burden it with aches and pains. So basically, it turns you into me, which is a 39-year-old man. If they succeed, they are fatigued and enfeebled 1 for 1 round. Like, would it have killed them to just, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't make sense to just say that they are sickened for 1 or frightened for 1 round. But it's like, you are really dancing around the edge here, that you're like, I only want it to be physical. I don't want it to be, just frighten 1, because that would affect their spell DC. It's, it's like, now I got to track 2 conditions. And now, fatigue and enfeebled aren't ones that come up a whole lot. So, and even going off on a rant here, the thing about enfeebled 1 that bothers me is enfeebled 1 gives you a -1 penalty to all strength-based D20 checks, which is great, right? We know the power of -1 and +1 in the Pathfinder 2 system. But there is also this throwaway line in there, which also is that it gives you a -X penalty, where X is equal to the enfeebled value, to the strength-based damage rolls. It's a good thing that at the level that we are, when my character is doing 27 points of damage per swing, that I'm taking -1 to my damage rolls, or that I cast this on an enemy who is doing, 30 or 40 damage, but -1 damage. It's like, it's so silly and insignificant, and I don't even know why it's there. It's almost more of a pain to track and to remember. It's just like one more thing that you have to keep track of when you're playing Pathfinder 2. Either get rid of it or make it something substantial, right? Like enfeebled, the value of the enfeebled times 5 is the damage, is a penalty. Or I don't know, make it scale somehow, right? We know enfeebled 1 is just as potent against a level 5 monster as it is against a level 15 monster. It's -1 to attack, and that has the same relative value at both those levels. But the level 5 monster is getting a -1 to damage, and the level 15 monster is getting -1 to damage. Yeah, I know that they don't want every spell to frighten, but the fact is that, yeah, K-Swiss deck. Maybe I actually like that value. Or the level of the effect or something. So if you cast this spell at level 3, it's a -6. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I don't know what we should make it. I'm just saying it's one of those things that it's one of those Pathfinder 2 things that I haven't really thought about fixing because I'm busy with a million other things, but I just don't like it. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't feel like it's that different. You want to make it feel different than frightened. I agree with you, Minindras. But then let's do something other than literally just making it subcomponent, right? Because right now, frightened and sicken literally do what enfeebled, clumsy, drained, except for the hit point part, and enfeebled, clumsy, drained, and a stupefied do. Stupefied gives you this little bit of extra, reduction to the chance that the spell fails. Okay, that's kind of cool. But enfeebled's thing is a -1 to damage, and that just doesn't seem even close to being interesting or on par. So again, I don't know what the situation is, but it is something on my list of, in a million years, like, what would I fix in Pathfinder 2? That's pretty low on the list, but it is there. So what is this spell? This spell, it does heighten to pretty nice. This spell is essentially sicken, for the most part. Sicken 1, except it doesn't affect their spell casting capabilities, but they can't get rid of it. They can't retch it, right? I know it says fatigued, enfeebled 1, but for all intents and purposes, let's just imagine this is basically -1 to their AC, -1 to their saves, -1 to their attack roll, -1 to their damage roll. It does heighten. So this is a ranged debuff. Now, we all know that slow is at this level, so it's pretty hard to do this. The range is reasonable. That heighten is okay. It sticks around. It is a fort save. Now, that's also part of the problem, right? This doesn't affect spellcasters. They're the ones who are likely going to have a low fort save. So spellcasters are going to be the most affected by this, but they don't actually care if they're enfeebled. Meanwhile, the people that you do want to hit with this are like your big brutes, your soldier-type creatures. They're going to have a better fort save, thus making them more likely to pass the save, thus making them more likely to only suffer the penalty for 1 round. It doesn't have the incapacitation. I think it goes into the C category. All right. Next is distracting chatter. Oh, we've come across one of the few bard spells that just randomly get thrown in after Curse of Ages, drain their life from their bones, wither away their thirst until they are dust. Now it's distracting. Oh, turn your mouth into an extra-dimensional vortex into another realm of nightmare and bulk 10. And then it's like, distracting chatter. I'm going to bombard you, sir. Bombard you. Oh, well, never mind. We got there. Overlapping speech, whispers, screams, and mutterings. Okay. They had to go there. All right. I roll it back. Never mind. This gets there. But here, distracting chatter, screams. No, those aren't that's not chatter. Don't call the spell this then. Also, by the way, another classic example of all this flavor text that I have to read before I finally get there. All right, what do we got here? Duration is varies. It is a Gods and Magic spell. I am tempering my expectation. No, this is Secrets of Magic. This is Secrets of Magic, Damien. We've got a 30-foot range. I got to tell you, those scare me a little bit. Those are pretty short range. It is auditory. It is illusion. That does going to come up a little bit. I like distracting cacophony a lot better. Eon Rider, gain yourself a hero point if you're in my campaign. We would change it on the spot. So what does this do? It makes the target flat-footed, and then it gets makes the target flat-footed, and then they take a -2 status penalty to purely auditory perception checks, aka useless, and we'll ignore it. And they must succeed at a DC 5 flat check to use auditory abilities or verbal spell components. What is hilarious about that is we discussed this before. Silence, being deafened doesn't actually affect your ability to cast spells with verbal spell components. But this does. Okay. DC 5 flat check is not nothing. That's a 20% chance that they're going to fail. And so the effect is worse stupefied. Well, the advantage here is they are flat-footed. And, flat-footed is not nothing. Not only is it a -2 penalty to their armor class, but it allows certain classes to take advantage of that. Rogue or whatever, investigator. If they succeed at the saving throw, it's only 1 round. If they fail at the saving throw, it is 3 rounds. Don't these sometimes just seem so arbitrary? It's like, why is this one 3 rounds and not a minute? What was this spell too powerful if it was 1 minute? It had to be critical failure 1 minute. I feel like they pull these things out of a hat. I really don't know. I'm not super impressed by this debuff. I got to be honest with you. Not super impressed. Heightening to 5 is plus 4 levels. Heighten 7 to target 5 creatures with this. I don't know. I mean, it targets will, so being able to hit melee-based creatures who might have low will saves, hit them with flat-footed for 3 rounds. But flat-footed is something that you can... There are a lot of ways, including just flanking, that you can gain, Yeah, I agree. It's useful. I'm just saying that flat-footed is not always the most, it's not as valuable because it's a circumstance penalty, and we can get it through just flanking. That's all I'm trying to say. So to answer your question, Gabriel, here is the deafened condition. It says, if you perform an action with the auditory trait, you must succeed at a DC 5 flat check, or the action is lost. The confusion comes in is that you are assuming that the verbal spell component has the auditory trait. And in fact, it does not. Sorry, Archives of Nethys is loading, so it takes 15 to 25 minutes. Here we go. So the spell gains the concentrate trait, but it does not gain the auditory trait. Well, that would definitely be something interesting. If you could find a page number, Gabriel, I would be happy to look it up. But that would also be completely, again, circumventing their entire trait system. So that makes sense. Yeah, Ian Ryer, it does provide flat-footed to your archers, your searing lighters, and I do appreciate that. So I'm not saying that the spell is useless. I'm just saying I'm not particularly impressed by it. I'm going to put it at C. It's a fine spell to take. It's a reasonable debuff, but I don't think it's so powerful that you're going to, be like really changing your game plan up too much. All right. Well, unfortunately, this is going to be pretty quick. Spells like Enthrall are spells that, in theory, I love. Okay, because again, I like crowd control. I like the idea of the Mesmerist from Guild Wars 2, the Enchanter from EverQuest, spells like Polymorph from World of Warcraft, or Sap from World of Warcraft. Spells that allow you to sort of deal with a large fight by making some of the monsters sort of out of the fight. The problem with Enthrall, in addition to having the auditory, emotion, and enchantment traits, is that the duration is sustained. It's every creature in range, which seems great on principle. The problem is, what does it do? It fascinates them. And we've talked about this before, but fascination is, for all intents and purposes, fairly useless. It really just doesn't do a whole lot. And, in this case, they even get to make bonus saves if they witness actions or speech that they disagree with. So fascination is just such a disappointing condition. It could have been way cooler. If you really want to see what this spell should be like, look at Calm Emotions. That is a good example of what, spells like this could have been or should have been. and it really isn't that great. Because all it essentially does is gives creatures a -2 penalty to their perception checks while they are fascinated, with the exception, unless it's perception checks against you. But yeah, Menandreas, I agree with you. Vin, I agree with you. Unfortunately, fascination is just a very, very weak condition, and that is all this does. So, sorry, Enthrall. I gotta put you in F. All right. All right, where's CRB 471? I don't know that I have my, Gabriel, I don't know that I have this around here. It's interesting though, the speaking basic action, all speech has the auditory trait, but when you're casting a spell, you're not subsuming the basic action of speaking. Just saying. Because then they would be even more actions. Why is fascination so bad? I wasn't on that stream. Fascination is so bad because fascination is very bad. We'll take a look at it. Again, give Archives of Nethys a moment. Hopefully everybody's doing well. Looking forward to the weekend. We actually have nothing going on this weekend. We're going to hopefully play some Pathfinder 2 tomorrow. Over at Mr. William Brandis' house. We'll be level 7 with my cleric, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Oh, I looked up. Oh, good, it did have it fascinated. Here's the thing: you are compelled to focus your attention on something. You take a -2 status penalty to perception and skill checks, and cannot use actions with the concentration trait unless their intended consequences are related to the subject of your fascination, as determined by your GM. So basically, you know, and it ends immediately if the creature uses hostile actions against you or any of your allies. So part of the problem with this is it doesn't actually, like, it prevents them from taking actions, but like if you fascinated, say, guards, and then you tried to like sneak in, you're still rolling against their perception DC, and their perception DC is just too lower. It doesn't really do what you want it to do. It's a very weak effect. You know, the number of actions that really come up with the concentration trait, like, oh man, they can only recall knowledge about me. Like, it's such a weird and limited scope of abilities. It just doesn't really do a whole lot. Right. So now we're debating whether or not the verbal part of spell component is speech, and I don't think so. Fascination and disarm are both unfortunate. I agree. Only -2 is a lot in this system. You know that. That is true, but again, if I'm casting the spell on the guards to sneak by them, then they know that I'm there because they can see me and they know that I'm casting a spell. You know what I mean? Like, it also doesn't prevent them from attacking me. That's the other thing. Like, if I try to fascinate 2 guards, okay, I was like, hey, I'll fascinate them, and while they're entranced with me, you guys can sneak in. I'll go, I enthrall them, and the GM goes, okay, they're fascinated. And I go, okay, well, what's the thing? They go, well, they get a -2 penalty to their perception checks, and they cannot take concentration actions unless it's you or the target. And I was like, oh, okay, great. He's like, all right, so what do they do? And they're like, well, they're going to stride over to you, flank you, and start attacking you. Why? Well, because they're guards, and they're guarding, and you're trying to enter. Like, it doesn't actually stop them from, like, doing anything. It doesn't prohibit them from taking actions. So that's why I don't really like it. Okay. Farsight. I must have skipped it or closed it. I did close it. Okay. Yeah, it's written as if it was crowd controlling, but it really doesn't do that. Again, if you want to crowd control, there's an occult spell, there's a divine spell. It's called Calm Emotions, and it is A+. Champion with Fascinated. Perfection Taunt. Let us see here. Farsight. Lasts for 10 minutes. It's 2 actions. And it lets you see something as if it was closer. You can view objects up to 30 feet away and up to 300 feet away as if they were 30 feet away. Anything that is more than 300 feet away, you can view. So it's a telescope sight. Okay. I mean, it's a scroll. It's not super great, but it's an interesting scroll. I don't know. What do you guys think? C? I think that's reasonable. Legolas, what do your elf eyes see? Actually, according to this, just came out in Last Press 3000. Actually, it says here that it came out in Quest for the Frozen Flame, which it's getting to look like that is going to be our next AP. Although I have to admit that this Abomination Vault, they probably won't be out in time for us to really take advantage of it. But I really enjoyed the Abomination Vault. We never got to finish it, and they're now coming out with this, super Foundry package for it. With all sorts of bells and whistles, and I really think that would be cool to do, but I have no idea what their time is. So maybe I need to reach out to whoever's producing that and be like, hey, I have a YouTube channel. I've got a few thousand subs. Why don't you hook me up with an early copy? I'll playtest it for you. Yes, Quest for the Frozen Flame does have a hex crawling element to it. So, okay, Zolgathor. We are on the same page, okay? We are on the same page. In my game, if a bard cast Enthrall as he approached the city gates and was like, hear me, people of this wonderful village, for I am Senwyn, bard extraordinaire and storyteller, and I cast Enthrall, and everybody's paying attention to me from, shop clerks and the town guard, I would 100% be like, the rest of the party members, it's like you're invisible. I mean, unless you're going to pull out a weapon and stab someone in the face, they aren't even going to pay attention to you. They aren't even going to do anything to you. They are essentially in a trance. They are in Dutch. For me, that is what Enthrall should do, and it's what I would want it to do. And in my game, it's probably what I would let you do with it, because that is how I want to do it. No, Ryan, why'd you break my soul? All right, well, here's the thing. Here's the plan. We probably won't be able to finish. If we play Quest for the Frozen Flame and we go really hard, maybe we can finish by November, then we can do it. Yeah, Ian Ryder, exactly right with Enthralled, Fascinated. Everyone should just be like, whoa, right? In a daze, in hypnosis, right? We'll get to that in a second because we have Hypnotic Pattern coming up. A lot of spells, by the way, that they included because they're sacred cows, because they were always in D&D, and they basically, do other things. So... I've been talking about Quest for the Frozen Flame for a while, Galarian, and Realm of the Mammoth Lords is an area that, especially as a Game of Thrones fan of the show, I was never a big fan of the free folk, the wildlings from the books, but the show really brought their culture and their thing to life. And 100%, I believe that the Realm of the Mammoth Lords is basically cribbed from the free folk, right? Primitive tribal people, giants, mammoths, literally the free folk of the North. So, anyways. Wow. All right. Nietzsche has the inn. Okay. Well, the good news is I'm a member of that Discord, so maybe I can reach out to them, but that would be pretty cool. I for one, would be really excited. But I also really would like to play Quest for the Frozen Flame, so I think it's an interesting part of Galarian, and I think it's an interesting idea or culture in general. Yeah, Lavix, it's what I used when I first did it, but this new Foundry integration they're going to do is going to have custom effects, macro scripts, music, animations, foreground elements, tile elements. It's going to be really cool. Yeah, there's perhaps dinosaurs. All right. Ghostly Weapon is our next spell, and this one is a simple buff. It lasts for 5 minutes, one of those weird 5-minute spells. They're like, we don't want this to last long enough for you to refocus or treat wounds, but even if it did last 10 minutes, it would end after that anyways, so not really sure what the goal here is, but it makes a weapon ghost touch. That's pretty cool. Ghost touch is very useful, but it's not something that a lot of people are going to put onto their weapon unless you're planning on fighting a lot of incorporeal creatures. This is definitely a scroll. And against creatures whom you need this, it is very potent. So I'm going to put it at C. Ooh, Ruinsmith says scroll B. Interesting. All right. Is Ghostly Weapon. All right. Is it A? Is it A or a B? Or a B or a C? Scroll. All right. Poll coming in. All right. Let me know. Oh, Luke says scroll B. My initial take was scroll C, but you know, we'll see what the chat thinks. I just want to say while we're getting this quick poll result, thank you everyone for tuning in as we come up prompt here on 2 hours. Obviously, we were a little distracted this evening as we've got some ghosts, ghouls, goblins. Oh, not goblins. Ghosts, ghouls, and skellies as we make our way through the preview of the Book of the Dead, a book that we'll be reviewing at the end of the month. Once it's fully publicly available, we're doing some previews. But, you know, while we kind of discuss that, I got to say, there's a lot in the book mechanically, even if you're not interested in the undead, there's a lot mechanically that they're doing with Pathfinder 2 there that I think is worth taking a look at. So, all right, here we go. Final. And in the poll. Luke, that's a good point. All right, it's B, and I could be convinced of that. As a cleric who likes to fight undead, I think it's weird that you don't really get this as a cleric. But never you mind. It's a little strange that, but okay. All right, that one's simple. Next, Gravity Well. Warp time and space.
Hungry hell yeah. Tip $10. Read the ghoul archetype, but really look at the satiation mechanic and how it plays with the feats. I think you'll like it.
Oh, well, if we get to $100, we'll definitely pull out the playable undead archetypes. That'll be probably our final preview for the evening. But I agree with what Hungry Williams said. Very, very cool. Steven, I think you're right about the cost, but I will say that not having to use up one of your rune slots is something to consider, and it's probably valuable to consider. All right, Gravity Well. We got a big radius, and we got 120-foot range, all very nice. 2 actions, very nice. And we create gravity. Creatures and unsecured objects move towards the center. It's forced movement, and everything just backs up and fills in, and what do we got? Well, even on a success, they move 5 feet towards the caster, or towards the center, sorry. On a failure, they move 15 feet towards the center, and on a critical failure, they move 30 feet towards the center. And that's pretty good. That is a big radius, 30 foot. That is a big range, 120 feet. And even the success moving 5 feet, but moving 15 feet is pretty powerful. It's also reflex save, which quite frankly can be when it's low, it tends to be very low. And so being able to move those creatures around is pretty nice. Now it's forced movement. You're not going to be able to get any trigger any reactions with that, but it's still pretty cool, I gotta say. I think this spell is really great. I don't know that I agree with Vin. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Vin. I don't think it is an S tier spell. My thought on it was, now that is true. You can definitely bring people into an area, back them up. Also considering that, if for 2 actions, it depends on the fight. If you're fighting one foe, but if you're fighting multiple foes, think about it this way. If you make them have to burn 1 or 2 actions to get back to where they were, then your 2 actions versus multiple foes could be 8 actions worth of actions out of the enemy, right? It's tremendously powerful. should also note that you could even use it on your allies, right? If you could set up a situation, right, where the enemy spellcaster gets moved to here and your fighter gets moved to here, and then you make them meet up in the center, and then your fighter gets to just, take 3 actions swinging. So it's very, very strong battlefield control. I don't think it's an S tier. So we'll go to the chat again. We got Gravity Well. Is this A or is it B? I'm going to ask the community while my dog barks. Naturally, also very good for terrain, difficult terrain, dangerous terrain, all that other stuff. The dog says B as well. Well, the vote is going on. We'll give that a few minutes. But yeah, I want to say thank you to everybody who has tipped. I want to say thank you to everybody who's a member of our Patreon. We're coming off of Q1 2022. I can't believe it's the 20s now. Just having an incredible and amazing time. It's hard work being a YouTube content creator. The people who do this full time and they really rely on it to, for their bread. Wow. My hat's off to them, because it is a lot of work. And for all those channels out there that are getting 2 or 3 or 4 videos out a week, it's a lot of work. I really respect the hustle. But for us, we have built a fairly small but very, very passionate community that we're very proud of. And, without the support of our patrons, this channel wouldn't even, we would literally not be here anymore. We would have folded it up months and months and months ago. So I just want to say thank you to them. Thank you for everyone's continued growth. And thank you to anybody who is newly joined or is considering joining. But a big special thanks to the people who've been there for a long time and have really basically allowed this channel to grow and thrive. All right. Here we go. I'm ending the poll. See what we got. It's A by a pretty good margin. So, 15-foot movement in the air is enough to trigger falling damage, which knocks enemies prone. Interesting. Can you force movement someone up? I didn't even consider that. Now look, it says, if force movement would knock you into a space you can't occupy because objects are in the way or because you lack the movement type needed to reach it. So, I don't know. That's kind of a toss-up. Obviously, the flavor of the spell would suggest it doesn't actually matter that you can't fly because gravity is sucking you up, but I will buy the A. You can jump. I don't know. I think if we went to the how it's played or the rules lawyer, I think you would get voted down there. You guys are really trying to make this happen. Well, right. I could go off a ledge because with my ground speed, I do have the ability to walk off a ledge. But with my ground speed and even my ability to jump, can I get 15 feet up into the air vertically? I don't think I can. Paizo's Razor. No, it's still a very powerful spell, and I still think it's a lot of fun. And coolness factor is off the charts, right? Like, we can totally admit to that. But I think it's really interesting that what Vin was suggesting, self-confessed cynic, for those of you who aren't a member of the Patreon, it was suggesting. What did you say? How it's played in Rules Lawyer Collab? I was just saying, if we were to posit them, could Gravity Well suck a land-based creature up off the ground into the air? So, Zolgathor, I don't think that's right. It says, usually the creature or effect forcing the movement chooses the path of victim takes. If you're pushed or pulled, you can usually be moved through hazardous terrain, pushed off a leg, or like. So, Zolgathor, you can definitely be pushed off a ledge. So. And when in doubt, in all other cases, the GM makes the final call. So, I'm not necessarily arguing it. You're talking to a person who used hero points that let people increase their success condition by 1. Of course, I would let gravity well suck people up into the air. I think that's pretty sweet. I'm just saying, you know, more persnickety people might argue the difference. All right, we come to one of the greats. Now, I'm going to say something very controversial here. I don't think Haste is very good. Yes, I don't think Haste is very good. I think Haste is very good at heightened 7. But I have seen Haste cast unsubscribed. I have seen Haste cast a lot. You know, especially when we first started getting into Pathfinder 2, we were coming out of Pathfinder 1 and old Haste, well, and 3.5 and 3.0. And in 3.0, Haste was completely broken. It basically gave you an extra standard action, which a spellcaster could use to cast another spell, which was obviously absurd. And then Haste in 3.1 or 3.5 or Pathfinder 1 gave you plus 30 feet to your speed and an attack bonus and an AC bonus, and it lets you make another attack at your highest attack roll. It just did a million different things. And it was AoE. So in Pathfinder 2, it is single target, 30-foot range, 2 actions. So already, if you cast it on yourself, you don't get the action until your next turn. So if you cast it on somebody else, they have to take at least 2 turns with 2 bonus haste actions just for you to be at parity, right? I gave up 2 actions, essentially, to give them, I actually gave up 2 actions and a level 3 spell slot to give someone else in the party 2 actions over 2 turns. So it isn't until the 3rd round after haste is cast that you actually are at an action advantage. Okay? Secondly, I have seen this spell. So again, when we first started playing Pathfinder 2, people who were, experts of the game, people like Tim and stuff, took haste right away. And they wanted to cast haste on their party members because that's what you did. And quite frankly, I don't think I saw a great effect of it. A lot of times people use the haste spells and they weren't very useful. Number one, if you're playing a Pathfinder Paizo AP, the rooms and the fights that you fight in are small enough that gaining the extra stride action isn't useful. If you watch the last couple of episodes, including our final episode of Rise of the Rune Lords, you know that I started to use much bigger maps. Because I started kind of pushing the boundaries outside of what the AP would traditionally use. And we had fights that were occurring with, giants and dragons that were 100 feet by 100 feet. Really sizable distances where someone having haste could actually be useful because you might actually need that extra stride action just to get extra 30 feet. But the fact that it is limited to just a stride or a strike, the fact that it is limited to a strike almost doesn't matter. There are very specific people who can really benefit this. One of them was our champion in the party, okay, who traditionally wanted to be able to say, move, raise their shield, strike, and then maybe lay on hands, all right? So if you have a character, or maybe there's a character who wants to move, cast a 2-action spell, and somehow still also has an attack. Maybe a war priest would be good, right? I suppose, Pierre, that's a reasonable expectation too. If you have a character whose 3rd attack isn't that bad, then that could also be very useful. I'm just saying, it is not the catch-all, incredible, amazing buff spell that it used to be. Ryan, if it could do that, that would be awesome, honestly. There are situations where I actually think granting a character an extra reaction would be far more powerful. If it said, at the beginning of your turn, choose to gain extra action or extra reaction, this spell would actually be a lot better. So I am 100%, in agreement with you there. And I'm sorry, there was a lot of chat here. I know that I said it. We got haste is only good at 7th level. of course, Vin is agreeing with me because we're on the same page about this. Because then you're getting a massive advantage, right? You're getting a massive advantage. I use 2 actions, and then maybe immediately in the next round, my team gets an extra 4. And then after another round, our team's gotten an extra 8 actions. If you have 5 party members, it's even more ridiculous. I like slow better. We'll get there. Blasphemy, says Eon Rider. Ryan agrees. Greater haste is good, though. Early haste is just not good action economy, and I hate to say it, but that's a lot of what the game is. The implication would be fine. Like, I don't know, maybe if you're basically like, I'm going to cast it on the fighter because they're just better at everything that I do anyways, but it just still seems pretty wonky. Haste should be 1 action at first level, then it'd be awesome. Might be a little pushing it, but at early level. Okay, early level. Yes, I kind of agree with you. The fact that this spell only trades in action economy means that you're down significantly. Your fight needs to go at least 3 or 4 rounds for you to get any sort of real benefit out of this. And not a lot of fights are going to last that long. And, what's more valuable? 2 actions right now or 2 actions over the next 2 to 3 turns? It's like a interest thing. You're not getting any interest on this thing until you get to that plus 3 turns later. If you cast this on turn 1 of a combat, you are not going to be up an action until turn 4 of that combat, at which point in time, the fight's already over. So, I mean, anyways, my point is, don't just assume this spell is great just because it used to be great, and it's not. Yeah, Ian Ryder, what you described, I think, is probably the best case scenario, right? Where you stride in, strike, and stride out. The problem is, a lot of people, there are a lot of classes that want to do that, have probably picked up something like, Attack of Opportunity or Disrupt Prey or Stand Still, and they want to be next to the monster because they want to trigger their reaction to get a full attack with no multiple attack penalty. As a caster who does cast 3 action moves, I would be nice to have a 4th action. Am I saying the spell is bad? No. I think the spell is, okay, let's be clear here. At 3rd level, I think the spell, okay, I'm seeing some C's. I think you're being overly critical of it. I think the spell is a B. With the caveat that the 7th level spell version is S. And maybe we'll bring it back when we do 7th level spell. But that is S tier. But I think right now, it's just, it's just, I think it's a B. So, the thing, YG, is, yes, but, you're assuming that, like, those classes are somehow better than your class. Well, they're not. Like, I'm giving up 2 actions and a spell slot for them to get, 2 actions, and then we're still down the spell slot. It's not really great. At S tier, it's incredible. Or if that this fight is going to go 8 or 9 rounds, I think, then you're getting your money's worth, right? I use 2 actions in a spell slot to give the investigator or the rogue or the monk 8 extra actions over the course of this fight. Wow, that's pretty powerful. That's pretty impressive. So, all right, I think it's controversial, but I think C plus, B depending on your party. I mean, there's definitely classes and there are definitely parties where this spell is going to be a lot better. But for the most generic case, it's just really not. So, Ryan is saying CS 1000%. Pierre is saying BS 100%. So I think we're all in agreement that it's probably in that B minus C plus range for 3rd level, and I think it's definitely S at 7th level. It's just so good. So yeah, number 1. There are much better spells for that. Number 2, you're going to cast the turn you cast it. You already didn't get to move twice. So that means that unless the chase is going to take like more than 5 or 6 rounds and not multiple minutes, you're actually behind at that point. So, all right. Minadress says C 3rd level. All right. We got a lot of We got a lot of hubbub in the chat, so here it comes. Boom. Haste. Is it a B or a C? You decide. And I'm going to drink this Cherry Coke Zero. I'm not voting, but my vote is B. Don't let that influence you. I agree, Luke. I agree. Well, that's an interesting reaction to hypercognition. So, yeah. If Haste had a longer duration, even 5 minutes, Damien, which let you pre-buff before going in more easily, then it would also be a lot better, right? Because then I'm giving up a slot, but I'm not really giving up my actions, and that would be a lot better. Aaron Smith from our Patreon Discord, William Bradis in the chat is our GM. He frequently is a very much looser with allowing us to cast spells beforehand. And a lot of times if we know a fight is in the next room, we can hear them. We have a little bit of a chance to prepare, even just a few seconds, because that's all it takes to cast one of these spells. He will let us cast something like Haste, and then like we kick in the door and roll initiative. So there's like a definite advantage there. And I honestly think spell casting in Pathfinder 2 would be a lot better if more spells could be cast as sort of a pre-buff. Honestly, they are the best, Storm Phoenix. I'm a Diet Pepsi guy. I'm a Mountain Dew. I like the Pepsi products, but when it comes to the cherry 0-calorie sodas, Cherry Coke Zero has them beat. Yes, this guy knows what he's talking about. Todd, you're 100% right. All right, final results are B. B it is. Okay. Our next spell, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that is actually crazy. It's been that long. Our next spell is Hypercognition. It's one action. And you can instantly use up to 6 recall knowledge actions. I think this spell is incredible. So we'll start there. Luke says Hyperconc is A. I'll not accept anything lower. That is a lot of lies. Yes, okay. I'm also assuming that you're playing in a game where recall knowledge is actually useful, unlike the way it is in most people's games. But in my game, recall knowledge is very, very powerful. It just annoys me because I hate raw recall knowledge. Okay, I will buy that. Basically, it's letting you make 6 completely bullshit and horrific checks instead of just 1. Yeah, I do not play with the crit fails by the book. I think that's horrible. It's stupid. Don't lie. Don't lie to your players. I cannot stress this enough. Or lie to your players and then tell them that you're lying to them and then say, but your character believes it. Like, as long as like the player knows, like lying to a PC is fine. Lying to a player is not fine, if that makes any sense. Yeah, I mean, it's Pathfinder 2, Luigi. I mean, they are going to do what they can to, to break it down. But one for 6 is incredible advantage. This allow you to, make enough checks to figure out almost what every creature in the fight is, or how to deal with a hazard, or what is going on with a certain magical effects. Boom, 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 boom. 6 for 1. That is pretty sweet. And also remember, this is an occult tier list. This is the only spell of level 3 that is for occult that is occult only. So this is only something that occult gets. This is the only class or tradition, I should say, that gets access to this effect. So I think that alone grants it A status. All right, Sean, I'm listening. I will listen to your argument, but I'm going to tell you in advance that you're wrong, but I will listen. Right, that is so many recall knowledge checks, Lug. You're probably like, after the fourth one, you're like, I don't know. I try to remember my mom's birthday. Like, what's going on? Now here's, ooh, did we just break the game? The statement was made that you can't make recall knowledge actions as part of downtime, but you can cast spells. And as part of casting the spell, you get to make 6 recall knowledge checks. So could I sit in town for a few weeks, casting this spell like 17 times a day, and recall knowledge in advance every single monster in the bestiary? Yeah, bonus points for being one action and verbal. So no manipulate traits. It's nice. Have you ever taken a test and thought you knew how to answer the problem and then found out you were wrong when you got the test back? Of course. Our knowledge is 100% flawed, and people misremember things all the time. It does not make it a good game mechanic. That's my point. Yes, it makes sense why people remember the false thing. What doesn't make sense is that it's just not a good game mechanic. So, all right. Moving on. Hypercognition. I like it. All right. Hypnotic pattern. You know, believe it or not, because of this Book of the Dead, I thought we were going to get one more preview, but looks like we're not going to. I'm probably going to go to about 9:30, so we got 20 minutes left. I don't think we're going to make it through the rest of these occult spells, so we'll probably have to do it as a two-parter. But I do want to get a couple more occult spells done. Maybe we'll get through the, close to like the M's, like the middle of it. And we'll go from there. All right, hypnotic pattern is enthrall, but instead of being enchantment, it's illusion. It's 120 feet. It's actually even a smaller burst. Enthrall is 120 feet. Everybody within range. And if they fail, they're fascinated by the pattern. It's not really great. The only advantage they get is people are dazzled inside of the pattern. Dazzle's not nothing, but it's not great. Yeah, it's not a great one. You can't even move the pattern around. Again, this spell could be interesting. At least it dazzles. All right, people. We are really scraping the bottom of here. We've discussed before that dazzle is not that great. So while enthrall was an F, I will give hypnotic pattern a D because of the dazzle. Gabriel, you are correct. In 5th edition, this is fairly close to hard CC, as it should be. Yes, and they get to reroll saves. Yes. Jazz hands. I want this to be like an EverQuest mesmerization spell. And it's not, and it makes me sad. So I will give it a D because at least it dazzles. All right. Invisibility Sphere. I think this spell is incredible. This is a fantastic way to gate a whole party through a wide area. They obviously make it so that it's not completely busted. You have to stay together. If anybody breaks the invisibility, it breaks for everyone. And it doesn't work in a battle because... by the way, just because of game balance reasons, Pathfinder 2 is funny how they try to explain things like in the world, but it's really just for game balance reasons because it says you all have to stay close together. It's like, but while exploring, it's easy to move together and remain invisible. But this is untenable in a battle. Once an encounter begins, the creatures remain invisible until at most the end of the first round, at what point the spell ends. But what if you stay together in a battle? Is that really untenable? How many fights have you fought in Pathfinder 2 where just everybody stays close together? I'm sure a lot. It's just so funny that they say it like this because they have to try to like make it make sense because it's like we don't want to be a game like 4th edition D&D, and so instead of saying this spell would be busted in combat, they had to come up with this kind of like wonky explanation which doesn't really make any sense. But it is It's fantastic for bypassing an encounter or being creative and sneaking in somewhere, or even though it does even though it does end at the end of the first round, it's great for an entire party to get the drop on a monster or something like that. And when you heighten it to 5th level,
Ezekiel tipped $15.
Oh.
Can't let this stream end without the last preview. Show us those skeleton heritages.
All right. Ezekiel came through, and we are going to be able to show that final preview. But I think Invisibility Sphere is good, and I think it's a powerful spell. I think it has a lot of flexibility and a lot of options. I could see an argument being made for it being a scroll, but honestly, I think it's valuable enough that I would take it even in my regular spell repertoire. Even as you go up in level and you get a lot of lower level spell slots, you don't really need to heighten this thing to 5th level to make it like that much better. You're still invisible, and that's a pretty powerful effect. And certainly when you heighten it to 5th level, you could really do some long duration, sneaking around and moving around. I really like the spell, and I actually think it's an A. All right, maybe it's not an A. Maybe it's a B. All right. Yeah, all right. I like B. I'll say it's like B+ for me. I could even see it being A-, but I think it's B. It's an expensive one, but, so I'm going to say B+, A-. I would do a poll, but, we're trying to wrap things up here, so I won't do that. But, all right, we'll do one last one. Another classic spell, a great spell. We have Levitate. So a couple of things. Number one, lasts, again, this wonky 5 minutes, but it's a willing creature or it's an object, which means you have a lot of, that's cool. It's not just something that you're going to be using on a creature. It's pretty powerful. Also, interestingly enough, when you look through this, you can move the target up and down 10 feet. It's a single action. And look, normally things like this have a bulk limit, but I don't see a bulk limit in this spell. So, I think you could levitate a boulder. I think you could do a lot of stuff with this spell, honestly. I think you could have a lot of fun with it. It's also one of the earliest accesses that you get to Sword of Flight. And obviously they make it so that, it's hard for you to, attack and stuff like that. And you have to burn an action to maintain yourself and all this other stuff. But, the spell has a lot of versatility. And at 5 minutes, it's long enough for you to do it, sort of to set up an ambush or to cast it before you get into a fight. And I think this spell is a classic for a reason. And the fact that you can cast it on an unattended object that, according to the rules here, does not have a bulk limit means that this spell is also very, very powerful for doing some crazy shenanigans, like lifting a giant boulder up or something like that, or even just accessing a place where creatures who don't have the ability to fly yet or are limited in having range attacks can't even reliably get to you. In 5 minutes, how far could I get that big boulder up into the air? Could be pretty far, and then you drop it on them. That could be pretty effective. I really like Levitate. It's, your earliest access to this kind of spell and effect, and it could be very, very, very powerful against creatures. I know for a fact that a lot of parties struggle against flying creatures because they don't have ranged weapons or they don't have the ability to fly. And so when you flip that situation around, you could even make, yourself, a spellcaster, essentially invulnerable, even just by getting, 20 feet up. And yeah, you'll take a -2 penalty to attack rolls, but if you're a spellcaster just casting electric arcs or fireballs, you don't even care. So I think that's very powerful. And I think Levitate's an A. All right. So, it did work on the Wicked Witch from Oz. So if you care to find me, look to the western sky. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves a chance to levitate And if I'm levitating so low, at least I'm levitating free. All right. Wicked's a good musical. You should listen and watch it. I apologize. I'm sorry. Everyone had to pay the final price so that we can go talk about the Book of the Dead. Book of the Dead. All right, so we are going to wrap it up for the spells there. So let's talk about these. Let's talk about these playable undead archetypes, and let's get the preview going because you're going to like this. All right, so a couple things. Zolgathor asked a question. Do you have these awesome rated spell lists in a written format? Have you thought of compiling these and listing them when you're done? I have. In fact, I actually asked the Patreon if this is something that I should put together and just make available to them in a nice PDF format or a nice Google Sheets format with a bunch of different sorting options. As a data scientist, I like to have different options for finding the spells. And I said, should this be an exclusive Patreon thing? And they said, no, share it with everybody else. So once I put it together, I was probably going to wait until after I was done with level 3, and I'll sort of do, book 1 will be levels 1, 2, and 3. All right, so a couple of things here. What they do here in the book is they give you a variety of undead options that you take as an archetype. And the exception they make is for the skeleton. The skeleton is a full brand new ancestry. And I guess they use this distinction here that they mostly leave you intact, but the skeleton is the exception. So you could get an archetype, which I suppose with free archetype, you could take right on top of your class to be a ghost, a ghoul, a lich, a mummy, a skeleton, which is again an ancestry, a vampire, and a zombie. And so one of the things that they do here is all the undead gain, several abilities. The necro language. You gain low light or dark vision. You have negative healing, negative survival. You're immune to death effects, right? Disease and poison. All the usual stuff. But this, I thought, was a really cool way that they introduced this concept, is undead hunger. So you don't eat or drink the way that other humans do, but you still have hunger and thirst, depending on your undead state. For example, a ghoul craves flesh. A zombie craves brains. A vampire craves blood. And so while you don't need to sleep or eat food or drink, you do need to sort of, recover in an undead torpor for about 4 hours a day. And you need to consume depending on your ancestry, depending on your archetype, you need to consume your chosen undead hunger. And as you get higher up into your undead state, you can sort of take more feats to sort of give you improved undead resistance to disease and poison and the like. They've got a cool little section here on being undead. Again, this is a great balance between that mechanic and that fluff. They have a nice sidebar here about how being an undead works in the game, how to run a game with PCs as undead. But it's not 25 pages, but it's not 0 pages either. It's just a nice, component here. I like that they talk about maybe using this as an option when after a TPK, maybe if this book had been out with the Rise of the Rune Lords, we could have done something different. So we've got archetypes, and just like everything else, it requires taking a dedication feat. It gives you a bunch of strengths and abilities. I'm going to skip through the ghost one here real quick. So if you look at something like the ghoul, not only do you get all access to all these ghoul feats, but you also get some additional feats that are sort of tied into a ghoul's behavior or traits, a little bit of background about them. And you could say here that, for the ghoul, your undead craving is for the flesh of dead creatures. Freshly dead corpses from sapient creatures fulfill your cravings much more than non-sapient or rotted corpses, but any dead creature can stave off the hunger for a little while. So again, you have this requirement when you're undead that you're going to have to, eat something, right? So very, very cool. I like how they did this as an archetype. You literally gain access to these powers and abilities as archetype feats, like the Swift Leap, and you gain this whole set of abilities, feverish enzymes and, sickening bite and stuff like that. And you can see here on some of these feats that if you are satiated, the bonus that you get from these feats is increased. This could be awesome, maybe, because this is providing you with what I always talk about on this channel, which is a mechanical fictional interface. Now I want to do what's cool for the story and what's cool for my character mechanically. This is a very redacted idea, and it's interesting and it's compelling, and I think that it's possible it could be really, really great, because it is a very clever way to approach this as a way to make these feats more interactive with the fiction of being undead, and to make the choice to fulfill your satiation one that has not just role-playing fluff incentives, but one that has real mechanical incentives as well. And I like when those things align. And some of my favorite games that I've been gushing about over the last few months, like Legend of the Five Rings or such like that, do that really well. So it's very interesting, very cool that they have this rider to a lot of these feats, which talk about increasing the benefit that you get when you are satiated. In this case, a ghoul having fed on, the flesh of the dead. So this one I really like. The Lich, well, the Lich has hungers as well, right? What is the Lich hungers? Well, you as a Lich, you crave knowledge. How cool is that? So cool. Such a cool idea, right? And so as a Lich, you are doing whatever it takes in order to gain information, gain knowledge, gain power. Also, they don't mess around with the Lich. Is this something that you're going to take at level 4 or 2? No, the Lich dedication feat is level 12. Love it. I love the idea of higher level archetypes. Again, there's whether or not you care about undead or not, this is the kind of book that makes me go, there is life left in this system left, right? There's life in the system left, because we can do, this is how you would do Mythic in Pathfinder 2nd edition, right? You would make higher level dedications with increased power that maybe tie into something in the world. This shows you how you can make a feat balanced, but then also allow the feat to become greater or more powerful if the players accomplish something inside the narrative fictional interchange of the game world that you're playing in. This is also not a review. I have no particular opinion about this book, and I am not going to say whether or not you should buy it or not, but when it comes out, if you are interested in Undead, maybe you should take a look at it, but I can't tell you for sure. So we got mummies, so let's talk about skeletons. Now, they picked skeletons to be an ancestry. I didn't really buy their explanation of why they did it. I think they just wanted one to be an explanation, to be an ancestry. So, it's just like any other ancestry. You've got, you might work harder than most to prove that you're an individual. Others probably assume that you're a servant of a necromancer, right? I think that skeleton was their attempt to basically create the undead from World of Warcraft. Okay, like if you wanted to be that sort of sentient, low-level, generic undead, we go with the skeleton. So we've got our skeleton. Just like any other ancestry, we've got information about them. They talk about their society. There's 6 hit points, medium, 25 feet, with dex, charisma, and free boosts. With a flaw to intelligence. That kind of stinks. But, they've got some language options, and they gain some traits, and you get all the undead benefits. So just like anything else, you have your heritages. You've got fodder skeleton. You've got compact skeleton. You've got sturdy skeleton. You've got monstrous skeleton. So again, you have these different heritages. The sturdy skeleton maybe came from a dwarf or an orc. You get 10 hit points and die hard instead of 6. The monstrous skeleton gets some sort of claw or horn or otherwise an inbuilt attack. And then ancestry feats, just like our other ones. 1, 5, 9, 13. I can never remember what the last one is. This one is pretty, Some of these are kind of funny, but again, we're playing D&D and we're playing skeletons. This is like it's like 50% cool horror and 50% Jack Skellington is how I would describe the skeleton ancestry. Collapse. It's a reaction once every 10 minutes. If someone crits you, you collapse into a pile of bones, and instead you only take regular damage instead of double damage. And you are flat-footed, and then on your only next action you can take is to stand, which reforms you into a skeleton in the standing position. So yes, it is, very, kind of silly in that respect. But we have a couple of interesting feats. This one here, well armed. Your detachable limbs offer flexibilities. You can interact to remove your arm and wield it in the other one. Again, very much playing up on the jokey tropes of maybe being a skeleton. They're not taking it as seriously as maybe I would, but I still think it's really interesting that they're doing it this way. Where it's like, on one hand, you have past life, which is a very, I think, almost somber ancestry feat, where flashes of your life, it almost is like some of the ancient elf ability, where you could become trained temporarily. You become trained in a skill and gain additional lore tied to your past life, right? It's a very kind of almost somber effect. And then next to it is detaching your arm to wield it as a club. So it's kind of silly. Bone Missile lets you rip out your ribs, kind of like the skeletal monstrosity, and whip them at people. Rejuvenation Token allows you to implant a piece of your consciousness into a weapon, armor, or other item. And as long as this is intact, it's almost like a kind of a soul cage type effect. They call it a soul-bound object, and it can be used as a special focus for Raise Dead Resurrect, and it can bring you back to your skeletal state rather than bringing you back to life. So this is the, I want to stay a skeleton. I don't want to be raised back into human. So it's kind of an interesting problem to have, but this allows you to do it. At 9th level, you can also pick up, same as a skeleton. You can pick up resistance to cold, piercing, fire, slashing. Also very cool. And then we've got our 13th level ancestry feat. Not gonna lie, says Self-Confessed Cynic. Thank you for the super chat. I really like the something for everything approach to the skeleton ancestry, and I agree with you. Or do I? Damn you, Joey. In the skeletal transformation, you basically can rearrange, you basically get animal form because you basically can rearrange your bones into being something a little bit more badass. In Skeleton Commander, you can summon your own skeletons. You learn the Create Undead rituals, allowing you to create your own army of undead. And then finally, at 17th level, you get Bone Swarm. Once a day, you can transform your body into a whirling storm of bones for up to 1 minute, or until you spend an action. You basically become a huge, kind of like an air elemental, you become a huge swarm of spinning bones. I mean, that's kind of sweet, right? I mean, if you're gonna play up the skeleton trope, then this is what you're playing it for, right? You basically become a swarm of living bones, right? Of sentient bones, and that is awesome. And then, or you can you gain the ability to cast harm once per hour as a divine spell. Honestly, if we're talking this feat here, might as well not even exist, because you're probably going to take Bone Swarm, because come on, that's what you want to play. I will agree with you there, Calidaria Q. No one playing a skeleton is really taking the game super seriously. I have no particular opinion on the art, because that would be like a review, but I may like it. And then we have a vampire dedication as well, which I'll scroll through here really quickly. But needless to say, you need to drink blood. And just like some of the other things, if you're satiated, you gain additional benefits and effects. And lastly, the zombie dedication. So very cool art. Or is it? Let me look at this. Once per hour, you get that unkillable reaction, right? If you would die, instead, you go to 1 hit point. So it's very, very interesting. Let's see here. This is what's, and again, each of the creatures kind of has a mini game associated with them, right? Like for the zombie, your body is always falling apart. But some zombies allow you to maybe push your body past its limits, but in exchange, there's a chance that your body deteriorates even further. It's only when your body is deteriorated that you're slowed one. So it's almost kind of like, like trying to trigger overdrive with the inventor and how like their gadget can backfire and but sometimes it doesn't backfire. Like it's kind of like that. You can kind of recover your body by spending 10 minutes. So again, it's a fun little resource mechanic using effects that we've already seen in the game, but doing it really, really well. And you automatically get a Jaws attack and you can, use it to eat people's brains. So that's pretty cool. So again, very, very fun. Yeah, it's just like Unstable. Thank you, Zolgathor. I couldn't remember what it was called. Unstable. Yeah, that's the one. And basically, yeah, the zombie is unstable, right? It makes sense, right? They're a zombie. So again, very, very cool stuff that we will be reviewing here, along with, I'm sure, reviewing along with everybody else. And we will definitely be interested to see what other things we can possibly come up with, because it's very interesting to see how they're pushing and developing the game. And I, for one, am excited about this because I've been pretty vocal about I don't think we need more classes. I don't think we need more bestiaries. And I'd like to see them push the system in interesting directions. Lost Omen books are fun, but they lack the crunch. And a book like, just a book of feats or book of classes isn't also what I want. I like these themed tomes that really bring a whole bevy of slew of options to the game. So it'll be interesting to sit down with Bob and Aaron here in the next couple of weeks to record our official review and get that out to you at the end of the month when it will become available for everybody. So if you're interested in the Book of the Dead, check it out. I think the street date is April 27th. So very, very, very cool. All right, we are 6 minutes over 9 o'clock, and that means we are coming to the end of today's stream. So I want to say thank you again to everybody who donated, everybody who super chatted, everybody who's a member of our Patreon. You all make the world go round, not just for me, but for everybody. I would be remiss if I did. Thank you. Street date, says Bob, 4/27. I would be remiss if I didn't say to you that now is a great time to check out the Knights of Last Call Patreon. We have an extensive collection of exclusive videos that are only available to our Patreon members. And if you join at the night level or higher, you can participate in our Northern Reaches mega game. If you really want to play a bunch of Pathfinder 2 with a bunch of super involved Pathfinder 2 people, but you want to do it from the comfort of your own home, but still play in sort of a, like a home game type feel where you're not just playing in a Pathfinder society where kind of everything is happening in a vacuum, but instead happening in a real persistent world, check out the Patreon. Link is below. We've got a couple different tiers. But we have to update the Patreon page. Doesn't fully list all the benefits that you get. It's my fault. I apologize. So yeah, let me think if there's anything else. Big news. We are going to be working to get the AP going. So that is the good news. Get some Pathfinder 2 happening up in here. Maybe along with some other games as well. We might run a couple different things. Yes, self-confessed cynic emotes. We will get those. We will get those in time for next week's live stream. And yeah, I think I'm going to sign off on that one. Thank you again, everyone, for participating. Thank you again for joining me. And Joseph Hickson, have you decided what you're going to do for the AP? It is looking like, because Abomination Vault's premium package isn't coming out till November, it's very, 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 very likely that we are going to do Quest for the Frozen Flame. And we will probably be playing Pathfinder 2 at least twice a month, possibly more, but we also may do some other games to explore some of our other gaming interests and to introduce the wide, fine world of Pathfinder 2 audience that we have to a wide variety of games so that you guys can share my love and passion for the vast trove of awesomeness that is tabletop role-playing games. So, I will catch you all next week. In the meantime, stay safe. Play your games well. Be prepared for the Book of the Dead. And we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call.